What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Today, I want to talk to you about an X-Men book, The Death of Wolverine. This is a 4-issue miniseries written by Charles Soule, with pencils by Steve McNiven, inking by Jay Leiston, coloring by Justin Ponzor, and lettering by Chris Eliopoulos. And this is a story that builds on some events that had already happened in the ongoing Wolverine series, where Wolverine had lost his healing factor. And so by this point, he's already in pretty rough shape. Reed Richards says that he will be able to figure out a way to help Wolverine, prevent him from dying, because without his healing factor, he is eventually going to die of radiation poisoning from the adamantium. And Reed says he will be able to fix this, but Wolverine has to lay low for a little while. So Wolverine decides not to lay low for a little while. There is a bounty that has been put out on him, and he goes through a series of events, and eventually he dies at the hands of Professor Cornelius, who was the doctor slash scientist who's behind him getting the adamantium put in his body. And I have to say, this book is not very good. So, first of all, it feels like this was a very corporate decision. Let's do this big, huge event where we're going to kill off one of our biggest characters, and it's going to garner a lot of media attention, and people are going to flock to our books, and they're going to read our books and see what are we going to do next now that we've killed one of our biggest moneymakers. It feels like they were looking at the death of Superman from about 20 years earlier, and they were saying, okay, that became huge for DC Comics. They got tons of new readers, they got new characters, new ideas and concepts out of the death of Superman, so we're going to do something similar here. This doesn't seem like something that Charles Soule and Steve McNiven came together and said, you know, it would be really cool if we could do the death of Wolverine. In fact, I don't even think either of these guys were actually working on the ongoing Wolverine title at that time. This really feels like somebody high up said, we're going to kill off Wolverine, let's see who we can get on this book. And then they get this creative team, and they all seem pretty excited about it, but this doesn't seem like a story that any of these creators had an urge to tell. This seems like something that they were told to do, and they said, okay, we're going to go ahead and do it. Also, it's not a very well told story. You could take the sequence of events in this book, and you could cut this book up and rearrange this sequence of events in any order, and you could basically get the exact same story. Wolverine is on an island, and Nuke, the guy with the American flag tattooed on his face, he comes, and then he fights Wolverine a little bit, and Wolverine finds out that there is a bounty on his head, and then he goes to Madripoor, and then he confronts Viper, and then he fights Sabretooth a little bit, and then Lady Deathstrike comes out of nowhere, and then she saves Wolverine's life, and then she tells him that there's also a bounty on her head, and then she tries to kill Wolverine, or tries to take him in, and then Kitty Pryde comes in out of nowhere, and then we find out that Lord Ogun, who is the enemy in the Kitty Pryde Wolverine miniseries of the 80s, he has possessed Kitty Pryde, and then Wolverine fights her a little bit, or fights Ogun a little bit, and then he finds out that Professor Cornelius is allied with Ogun, and then he goes and meets Professor Cornelius, and then he finds out Professor Cornelius is trying to put adamantium in these other people, and it's going to kill them, and then Wolverine accidentally gets covered in adamantium, and then he dies. I think you could take this sequence of events and rearrange it in any way. What if instead of meeting Nuke first, what if he met Ogun, and then from there he goes to Nuke, and then he goes to Lady Deathstrike, and goes to Viper, and then from there he goes to Cornelius. It seems like they were just trying to take some of Wolverine's biggest enemies, and we're just going to throw them in this story, but nothing really happens for the first 3.5 issues, and then he dies by getting bathed in adamantium. This could have been a one-issue story in the main Wolverine book. This was a 4-issue event, and that seems really short for a big event like this. A lot of times big events are going to be 8 or 12 issues long these days. 4 issues doesn't seem that long, but there's hardly any plot here at all. This could have been a one-issue story where Wolverine finds out that there's a bounty on his head, and then he finds Professor Cornelius, and then he tries to stop him from putting adamantium into these guys, and he ends up getting covered in adamantium anyway. And honestly, it probably would have flowed a little bit better with the series, since that is where he lost his healing factor. He lost it a year or two before this miniseries. It feels like that would have felt more organic if you did that. Overall, I feel like everyone involved with this, they really wanted this book to be good. They put a lot of care and thought into it, but ultimately, I feel like this felt like a cash grab. This felt very corporate-minded. This didn't feel like an artistic decision to do this story. And also, the story just wasn't that well told. Even though I fully believe that everyone who was involved with this really tried, and they put a lot of effort into it, I just don't think that this this is a story that they had that much interest in telling personally. You look at the backwards interview here, or not the backwards interview, the interview that's in the back of this book here from Lin Wein, where they interview him and kind of talk about Wolverine's 40th anniversary, and he even says, yeah, they're going to bring Wolverine back at some point. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're going to do it. And he says something like, I haven't read the story yet, but I'm sure it's going to be good. And I'm thinking, it just really seems like you guys were doing this because it's the 40th anniversary of Wolverine. It doesn't really seem like they were doing this because they had a desire to tell the story. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the death of Wolverine. He is even back now. It hasn't even been that long since they killed him off. I don't know what he's doing now, but we have seen this particular version of Wolverine back in the comics since he died. So it hasn't even been that long since they killed him off. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the death of Wolverine. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back later with some more videos. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.